mare te ashe o yo yo, mare te ashe ay ay ay, mare te ashe o yo yo, mare te ashe o ya ya, mare te ashe o yo yo, mare te ashe ay ay ay, mare te ashe o yo yo, mare te ashe ay ay ay. Give thanks and praise. Much love and respect, dissidents. This one is going to be a complete re-amalgaming of entire swath of Slick Dissident projects so far. And I owe a great debt to many researchers who have come before me to blaze this path and give the telemetry data of the Monomyth as it relates so powerfully to both the Iliad and the Odyssey. And I want to drop a couple names that I've actually gotten wrong in the past. Michael Goldberg has done a fascinating revelation of how the Odyssey is, in fact, the Enneagram being played out in reverse. And another researcher who has fortified this perspective is a fellow by the name of Ken Webb, W-E-B-B. Very apropos that his name is Ken Webb. And so I completely recommend checking out their work on how the Odyssey relates to the Enneagram very, very soundly. And I myself did a project many months back, taking a journey through the Odyssey as it rolls counterclockwise around the Enneagram. And I misspoke in quite a few places, and some of my associations to the Enneagram onto the map of anomalous locations in Antarctica. And some of them I was a little nebulous on. I wasn't 100% decisive, and I've always wanted to come back to the project and honor my perfectionist reformer with a shadow of wrath and a remedial virtue of wisdom, nature, and rewire some of the claims. And as my depth perception on the Enneagram gains higher levels of approaching mastery, I have to look back at what I thought I knew and reset and rewire a great amount of my appreciative lens. And so I don't have a lot of time to ramble, which I love to do oh so much. I should batten down the hatches and embrace for the storm that is coming down the timeline right now. Part of what inspired the project has a great amount to do with my discovery on the reticular formation that is at the brain stem of the human anatomy. And this reticular formation has a great deal to do with arousal. And I love the word arousal because it's just ambiguous enough. It's ambivalent enough not to really engage with antipathy or sympathy. It's neutral. Arousal is a great word because there are so many flavors of arousal, but it all originates from the reticular formation of the brainstem. And I had just made this discovery over Thanksgiving regarding this card, the universe card, and how it relates to the reticular constellation in the heavens, which is at the extreme south. And I believe the reticulum is number 82 on the IAU. Let me check that. Yep, 82, RET, reticulum, number 82 on the IAU. And 82 is the number for lead. It's a very Saturnian number. It's also a correspondence between the Saturnian number 8 controller with the shadow of lust and the number 2, a giver with the shadow of pride. 82 is the periodic number for lead. And so 82 being signified by reticulum is very synchronous. You know, when my eyes walked through the IAU, I could see very powerful correspondences in the numbers that are associated to the constellations as they are ordered by size. And I have quite a few other theories that are kind of cooking on the back burner regarding the order of the 88 major constellations that are listed on the IAU. And someday I'll take everybody on a tour through what I see with the numerical significance of the 88 constellations of the heavens. It's really magical. I'll share one. One of my favorite ones is that the Mosca constellation is abbreviated MUS, and it is number 77 on the list of the IAU. And that really satisfies me. It very much satisfies me. Another thing I'll just put a little footnote on. Back when I was buzzing on, wouldn't it be interesting if the choreography of fight scenes in movies were actually speaking body language in 3-letter agency? That it is very possible that by merely signifying 3 letters with the body in a film, they can summon, they can evoke entire constellations that have archetypal meaning going way back through our DNA. And I also made the claim that it is the referees that keep people affluent, they keep them literate to what body language is used to signify from far distances. Just like my claim that the tarot cards are the costume department of Hollywood, and all they need to do is bring out these costumes and move them around like flags to make the homunculus of the masses go right or left in a false dichotomy. So, reticulum constellation over Thanksgiving was really potently fulfilling its meaning as I was investigating the significance of the Leonid meteor showers as the sun is passing through the Pavo constellation. As we move from Scorpio into Sagittarius over the next month, the sun is going past the Pavo constellation, but the Argo is having a meteor shower at the same time. And to me, this signifies the story of Mercury singing Argos to sleep and then decapitating him as a mercenary kill order. But Hera puts him back together and gives him the body of a peacock and then puts him into the heavens. So essentially every year during Thanksgiving, while everybody's having turkey, the sun is rolling through the peacock, and they're very closely correspondent to each other. And something really wonderful about the Greeks is that their zoology was very nebulous. It was not hyper specific like the secular mind today prefers to remain. So many of the constellations to the Greeks were generic umbrella terms. And today we get really caught up in the nitty-gritty and the nitpicky details. You know, one example is the word ox. To the Greeks, to the ancients, the word ox meant a male bull of a male cow a male ram, a male goat, a male of any herd animal was considered the an ox or a bull. These terms we immediately associate to the cow, to the bovine, but it also is the same category for all the other alpha male animals. And so all of the alphas in culture are a bellwether. They're a castrated ox that leads the herd, and they have a bell on their neck, and people just follow along blindly. They only have to follow what they heard. They only have to follow what they heard. They don't have to think for themselves. They just follow the bellwether. And that is why the letter A is the first letter on the alphabet. So order followers uh, are habitually reading words and following the orders of the words. And something that my anarchist spirit has granted me is the ability to break orders and find anagrams in playing games inside of our psyche in the most fascinating ways. So I got to stay on track. This is going to be a long one. Very recently, so after I made this discovery about the Reticulum constellation, as it is at the extreme South Pole, it dawned on me that this is Chewbacca when he gets caught in the net and lifted up into the net with all of his buddies and trapped by the Ewoks. And then he's surrounded by these natives with spears. This is the Indus constellation. The Indus constellation is holding Plumbata spears. He has 3 spears in one hand and 1 spear in the other, signifying the lunar calendar. And he's also just underneath Ophiuchus as well, the 13th constellation. So all of that is happening right now at this time of year, and it has my entire life, and I'm only now getting the context to convey its significance to people. So that discovery was really rewarding to me. And as well, I have placed all of the endocrine system onto the Enneagram based on the muses and how the muses affect our biological imperatives through the day and through your lifetime. And there are rites of passage that observe these biological imperatives in so many wonderful ways. And so from the micro to the macro, I've discovered both the muses, the Davies, the nature of the characters, and as well, the endocrine system is in full effect in my new lens. And the reticular formation has always been the gap of the Pythias between the 4 and the 5. Right down there next to Indus and Pavo is the Ara Altair, is the Table constellation, and coterminal to all of this is the microscopium and the telescopium. This is the military-industrial complex. MIC is the abbreviation for microscopium. And the reticulum constellation, while it is a net, the word means a net, it also means crosshairs. And the crosshairs are used on a telescope so that you can actually plot out the grid system to navigate the stars and measure how far one star is to the next. So the reticulum is a crosshair. And furthermore, Chewbacca, his character, has always been signified by Chansley. When Jacob Chansley was caught up in a drag net operation on January 6th, he was embodying the archetype of Chewbacca. And so having seen how the epics of Star Wars, the epic of Star Wars, I know that it will be unpacked 100,000 times for our lifetimes and for generations to come, and it rewards me to see the context of what the epics are serving as promulgation protocols. This is predictive programming, and a lot of people have had a real sour taste for what Star Wars means, and I have found a lot of redemption in overcoming what is lame and seeing the messages that are going on, seeding the subconscious. And Oh, I'm just going to ramble. I want to just make sure everybody knows that I perceive the subconscious as operating during the daytime. It is an x-axis. The unconscious is what is going on while you're asleep. And so I think a lot of people are misusing these terms. Analytic philosophy and psychology is only able to talk about the unconscious because it is objectively true that everyone has dreams. The subconscious, Freud had to cut and run. He had to leave the subconscious behind. And if you research the difference between the two, they'll tell you that the subconscious is free floating in the New Age movement. They still use that term, but clinically, you can't address the subconscious. You have, in order for Freud and psychology to be funded by insurance, it had to stay clinical. And so he had to cut ties from subconscious, and he can only claim the territory of the unconscious. And so, a great amount of the confusion, I think, I see a great amount of confusion in that everybody is using the term unconscious, which is admitting that you're asleep, that you're a sleepwalker, that you're a somnambulator. But I happen to believe that the subconscious is happening in your waking hours at all times, and it is catching a great amount of more information than you would ever know. This is the Sobek on shoes. Sobek on shoes is your subconscious, this little alligator on the feet of the Fool card. And the reason why the Sobek on shoes signifies the subconscious is because Sobek is an alligator at the foot of the Nile, and the alligator has a disproportionate bite ratio. He can take in way more information than you would ever imagine. And he has an incredibly powerful bite. His downward pressure is of the highest pounds per square inch. But the funny thing is the alligators can't open their mouth as strong as they can close it. So much like rats don't have the ability to expel any toxins, they can only take in. Mice and rats can only take in. They don't have free will to say, oh, I don't like that. They can't throw it up. Same thing with the alligator. It takes it in and it locks down on it, but it doesn't have nearly as strong of ability to expel what it has taken in. That is the totem magic of the subconscious, the Sobek on shoes. And Sigmund Freud had to abandon that and leave it to the quacks. And so he could get clinical recognition and really claim his territory on the unconscious. And so I think it's very important that everybody finds their own relationship with the difference between the subconscious and the unconscious. I see it as an XY axis or maybe a reticulum. All right. So we're going to dial our microscopes and telescopes in our micro and our macro. We're going to harness the power of Uriel and Raphael, and we're going to really analyze what we thought we knew on a much deeper level. So, essentially, I want to talk about how the Odyssey is unpacked into the Enneagram briefly, and then we're going down to our Antarctica again, because there is a publicity event taking place in Antarctica, potentially in the next week, and it is called The Final Experiment. And this is going to be a determinative effort to discern the shape of the realm. And I have to stay extra ambivalent, as I myself, I'm a bit globe shape agnostic. If I had to commit to anything, you might accuse me of being a dodecahedron earther, but that's only because I really like convincing myself that I'm original or unique, not into groupthink. So you have a hard time putting me in either camp, a real hard time. But I'm very interested in the experiment. You know, people are making a fuss over naming it an experiment. I would make a fuss over naming it final. I don't think it finalizes anything, but it is progress. It is progress. It's also a gambling endeavor. There's a lot of gambling going on behind the scenes regarding the entire trip. And apparently the trip has been scheduled for many, many months now. And I'll just point out that anybody who was making bets early in the endeavor, the duration of risk is longer for people who place their bets early. These latecomers to place bets on the outcome of this adventure, those latecomers, they don't have the duration of risk as much. And I'll also point out that the stock market was either invented by Theseus, excuse me, no, uh, uh-oh, uh, uh-oh, pause, give thanks and praise. Uh, uh, Thales is the philosopher who very likely invented the stock market. He could foresee a shortage in the harvest season coming in advance, so he bought up all of the stone mills that people require to make food. He bought all of them, and when there was a shortage in the crops that he could foresee because he was paying attention to the heavens, because he was using astrologoi, he owned all of the mills that people need to make the food. And when there was a shortage in the crops, he jacked the prices up to rent the mills to make food. And that is powerfully correspondent to the story of Joseph, who also advised the Pharaoh that there was a shortage, a famine on the horizon, and to store up the grains to persevere through a bad season. Indicating that Joseph was also an astrologer. And as well, the book of Job is all about speculation. It's God and the devil making bets on the most pious of pious patriarchs. And it is not even remotely a coincidence that Job's name is Job, Travahar, tribulations. He had to go through the hard times. And still today, the stock market is engaging in these speculations of how pious you will remain in the job market. So, as well, Thales, the inventor of the stock market, he is signified by a millstone. He is signified by almost all fool cards. And Thales died looking up at the heavens, fixated on the stars, and he fell into a hole because he wasn't watching where he was going. So every fool card has always been a hail to Thales, the grand patriarch of the stock market. All right. Yeah. So the bets are working behind the scenes regarding this endeavor, this final experiment that's about to take place in Antarctica. And the location that they have chosen is the Ellsworth Mountains. Let me get that right. Ellsworth Mountain Range is the location that they intend to do the experiment. And the Ellsworth Mountain Range is right on the brainstem of the map of Antarctica that I've said it a million times. It looks way too much like a brain, way too much like a brain. And the psychological operations of the anomalies around Antarctica, they correspond perfectly to the Odyssey. And something about the Odyssey that I think so many people could gain much self-mastery from is the fact that the Odyssey is the first story ever where the main character is embedded into his own story and compelled to regale his adventure, to tell how he got there in the first place. And the last line, I believe, maybe in some translations, his last line to Penelope is, "Where do I start?" Because she wants him to tell the story all over again. And he says, "Where do I start?" That is the exact question that Lucifer asked the angels to spark a revolution in heaven when he asked them, "Do you remember how you got here? Where did you start?" And the revolution around claiming the zygote and disavowing the zeitgeist, it's the kind of thing that gets you aroused. It brings the arousal response to the surface in really potent ways. All right, so in Odysseus, the first 4 chapters are called the Telemachy, and 1 through 4 is actually taking place in Ithaca, and it's laying out the fact that the king is gone. There's no justice in the realm, and the suitors have been plundering the supplies, and Telemachus, the son of Odysseus, is trying to find resolution as to what to do with the king. Has been absent for almost 20 years now, 10 years in the Battle of Troy and 10 years on his journey home. And so it's been 20 years since he's seen his dad, and he's coming of age. And the suitors have laid siege to. The siege perilous is taking place in his home, and he needs to find his father and find resolution. So the first 4 chapters actually take place in Ithaca, in the center of the Enneagram. And this is the classic maneuver of the epics. It is called in media res. The epic stories start in the middle. And so the first 4 chapters, 1 through 4, very sacred number, that 14. Adam, AD equals 14, AM equals 14. Put them together, you get Adam. Eve equals 14. Snake equals 14. Put them together and you get 24. You put it all together and you get 56 cards of the minor arcana. And the Adam, Eve, and the snake are cast down to the earth. That's a whole minor arcana cast down to the earth. And when you pull out the ace cards in the equinox and the solstices, you have 52 weeks left. So the 56 cards of the major arcana are a zodiac. They are a full calendar with the ace cards pulled out at the solstice and the equinoxes. All right, 14, 1 through 4 are the first 4 chapters of the Iliad. The story picks up with him on the island of Calypso. Calypso is a nymph, and she's giving him everything he wants and then some. She's a major giver. She's going to overgive. She wants to give him immortality, but he is sad. He is experiencing great grief and tragedy. This is really powerful because it is in book 5 that picks up with him on the island of Calypso. He's experiencing tragedy, number 5, sadness, melancholy, and she is a giver, number 2. 52 weeks makes up a year. From Calypso, he has to flatter her. He has to appease her pride. She asks, am I more beautiful than any woman you've ever known? And he has to lie. He has to lie, but he lies very cunningly. He lies very strategically. It is in his essence. Odysseus is the cunning one. He has many epithets, and he lives up to them in really powerful ways. But he has to appease her pride and flatter her, and then she takes a vow on the river Styx. The river Styx is the river of hate, and many other things, but this is the difference between hatred and anger. This river Styx divides the instincts of your internal feeling groups and your external action, your body, the external world, the manifestation of action. Rage is in the number 1 spot. Hate is the dividing line of your instincts right here. And Calypso actually makes an oath on the river Styx and sets him free. And then he moves forward, he progresses to the island of Phaeacia. And at this point, he is in book number 6. And it is really fascinating to me because number 6 is the first perfect number. And the Phaeacians they got a real buzz for propriety. They're obsessed with order and propriety and what is the highest refinement of of um, etiquette. Of etiquette. So yeah, 6 is the first perfect number to the Pythagoreans, and it is in the island of Phaeacia where he is listening to the rhapsodes. This is Polyhymnia. She's the muse of rhetoric. And Clio is the muse of history, and it is in the number 2 spot on the island of Calypso where he is obsessing over his past. So yeah, then he moves into the Phaeacians, and in the Phaeacian court, the rhapsodes, the storytellers, are actually talking about him, and he can't help but start to cry. And the king is the only one with the awareness to look into his eyes and see a deeper truth being hidden. And this is where the king actually draws Odysseus out and compels Odysseus to tell his own story. This is the birth of human beings associating with the story, being drawn into the story. And it is very powerful to know that you are the author of your own story. However, this is the bedrock of psychological associative principle of conflating the subject for the object. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's very powerful to understand the first time that a fictional character is reflecting on his own journey inside of fiction. This was breaking the fourth wall that long ago. This is the original breaking of the fourth wall when Odysseus starts to tell his own story. And when he starts to tell his own story, I should say, when he lands on Phaeacia, Athena, who is number 1, Hera's number 2, Athena's number 1, Athena puts him to sleep first. And that's fascinating because of melatonin and the circadian rhythm. He has a sacred sleep is brought on so he can rest because he's exhausted when he gets there. So later on, he's telling his own story, and he starts the story in the Lotus Eaters, the story of the Lotus Eaters. He might start with the Cicones, but then he moves into the Lotus Eaters. The Lotus Eaters are the epitome of slothfulness, and in the endocrine system, this has much to do with serotonin. Then he moves into the story of the Cyclops and Polyphemus and the cave, and he and his buddies start getting eaten by this son of Poseidon who has no regard for the protocols of hospitality. He does not honor the rules of hospitality. And when Odysseus tries to go through the formalities of hospitality, he realizes this guy doesn't observe the ways of Zeus. This guy is the son of Neptune. He does what he wants. And so he gives him a false name. I am no one. And then ends up sticking a stake into his eyeball, and the screams that Polyphemus makes when the stick goes in his eye, the word he uses for the pain is actually the same word for birthing pains. He's actually saying it hurts like a baby, like I'm giving birth to a baby. And so yeah, very potent, and of course, and he's flailing about much like Terpsichore as the muse of dance, but also there's a lot of adrenaline. There's a whole lot of adrenaline, which is correspondent to Terpsichore and the number 8 controller, the shadow of domineering or lust. From there, he moves on to the Aeolians. The Aeolians give him, it's a hot air balloon, y'all. Read between the lines. It's a hot air balloon. The zephyr winds that help his ship almost get home, and then his shipmates pull the bag open and let the wind out of the bag, and then he ends up falling back to the Aeolians, and he has to go ask them for another zephyr wind, and they refuse. This is the enthusiast with the shadow of a glutton and a remedial virtue of abstinence. They abstain from giving him a second chance. Very potently correspondent to testosterone in the Enneagram. This is Calliope, the muse of all the epics. Then he moves on to the Lestrygonians in number 6, and they're a bunch of they're blinded by fear and anxiety. They attack him without even, with no question, with no observance of the of welcoming a guest whatsoever. They just snatch dudes up and start eating them. Anxiety is the shadow of number 6. Lestrygonians. The muse is Arato. This was an empty seat in the symposium. Lestrygonians, something in their name encodes that they live in a land where there is no sunlight, where they're the not seas. They're the not seas. They're blinded by their anxiety. So they are the loyalists with the shadow of fear, or I like anxiety a lot better. This relates to estrogen in the Indo-Nietzschean system. Next, he goes to Circe, and on the island of Circe, Circe lives in the center of the island, isolated from everybody else. She's shut off from the world. She is an outcast in her own right, and he has to take the Molly so that her her um, her her potions of transmuting men into pigs won't work on him, and then he has to seduce her, and they have to earn trust and uh, get get a little erotic so that they can have a relationship. She convinces him to turn his buddies back to men again, and I'm pretty sure when they turn back to men, they're actually younger, and so they don't mind stick around Cersei's house. We got extra years. We just earned extra mileage uh, from being returned to their natural form. Cersei gives him the instructions to go down to Hades. He has to literally take the ship down to Hades. They go across a strait called the sea within the ocean, or the ocean within the sea. It's some kind of, it's like a weird koan. The name of the strait that he has to go across, that strait's passage. He's going down to Antarctica. And it is in Antarctica that he does a blood sacrifice uh, and stays off the spirits so they can't drink the blood of the 2 rams that he killed. And when Tiresias comes, Tiresias is the Indus constellation. When Tiresias comes and drinks the blood, he prophesies for Odysseus as to how to get home and what to do. Very, very potently correspondent to Indus, which is in the extreme south. It's basically hovering over Antarctica all the time, along with Pavo, along with the reticulum, along with the microscopium telescopium, the Ara Altair. All of these extreme southern constellations are all encoded in the scene of him going to Hades and talking to Tiresias. From there, he goes on to enduring the sirens, the call of the sirens. And the sirens sing 2 different songs. They sing either I feel your pain, I know your struggle, I sympathize with you, or they can tell you about your future, whether you should go forward or not. Then he has to brave Scylla and Charybdis, and he knows that he's going to lose at least 6 men, because I'm pretty sure Scylla, I think it's Scylla, is a 6-headed monster. So it's like you either go into Charybdis and you might lose entire boats, or you get over yourself. This is the endorphins, the postponing of gratification. He literally says, you got to get over yourself. And he just lets the Scylla take 6 of his men so he can get past. And then he goes to the island of Trinachia. It literally has the word tri in the name of the island. This is the island of Apollo, where they steal some of the ox of Apollo, basically. Helios. I think its real original name is Helios, before the Romans came along. And the ox that he kills puts him in debt, but he has a fallout with his ship captain, because they're starving. And he tells them, nope, y'all got to eat berries and herbs. And then he takes a hike, he turns his back for a minute, and when he comes home, he can smell that they've cooked some of the ox of Helios. And his ship captain has betrayed him. And then from there, he moves forward to the Oh, from there, I think actually from there it is where Neptune sinks their boat at one of these two places. I think it's between Trinachia and getting back to Calypso, where he is actually closing off to where we picked up on his story. So he's completed his cycle at this point. Um, and so the story has a broken chronology, and that is also true to the epics that always start in the middle. So that is a quick run through on Odysseus, going through the different archetypal endeavors of the Odyssey. And now I'm going to wrap on Antarctica. There are a great many mysteries around Antarctica, a great many myths, and in fact, there are a great many broken ships and vessels that have been sunk or abandoned in the ice down there in Antarctica. Well, wouldn't you know, the Argo Navis, the ship of fools, is preserved in the extreme south. There is a stellar vessel in the extreme south, and it's even broken up. There are little pieces over here and pieces over there, almost indicating something of the Pangea myth. You know, that one of these anomalies is said to be a gigantic meteor that struck the Earth and caused Pangea to break up. That's one of the claims that takes place in the mythology of Antarctica. I'm going to start with the Wilkes Land anomaly. The Wilkes Land anomaly is a gravitational vortex where the math does not work as anticipated. It is 45 kilometers across. This is signifying, in my read, the lotus eaters. There's an extreme gravity. This is much like ketamine. That the K-hole is right here, and his homies almost got caught up in the K-hole from eating the lotus, and he had to actually restrain them and struggle to strap them into their seat. Lotus seaters. He had to. Lotus has much to do with like luchadors. Luchadors are strugglers, and then he lucha seaters. He struggles to put them in their seat. The lotus seaters. And also the 45 kilometers across, well, this is the 4 to the 5. 4 plus 5 equals 9. Also, the aspect of the gravity works not as it is predicted to work. That is the undermining of expectations of overly high ideals, and the idea that everything is resolved. Serotonin. Yes, this also signifies Hegel being undermined by Goethe, because Hegel had overly high ideals. So what is predicted is not correspondent to what is in reality. And in fact, the truth of the world is that gravity is not really the same anywhere. Even within the standards, there is some deviation depending on where you are on the Earth. Yeah, so the undermining of high ideals is very true to the Wilkes Land anomaly, the gravitational vortex of the K-hole ketamine of the lotus eaters. Adrenaline of the Cyclops. I'm going to give this to the man who undermined Shackleton and Robert Falcon Scott. Let's go here. Robert Falcon Scott and Shackleton worked together on many trips to Antarctica, and they had a bit of almost a mutiny. They almost had a mutiny on one of their adventures, and they came home and they acted like friends, but they were kind of backstabbing each other. I'm going to put the Shackleton right here in the island of Trinachia, just like Odysseus, his first mate, betrayed him. There was something of a mutiny on the island of Trinachia, just like Robert Falcon Scott versus Shackleton. In Shackleton and Falcon Scott, they had a failed adventure that went to the 82nd parallel. 82nd degree parallel was their first trip. It was the closest they got. 82, the symbol of reticulum and the symbol of Saturn. That's the furthest they went on the first try. And they had to come back, and then Shackleton went back a couple more times. He took the Endurance and he took the Nimrod. This is also the point where Polyphemus actually gets his revenge, where he asks Poseidon, number 3, to take revenge on Odysseus. So yeah, the Endurance and the Nimrod were the names of Shackleton's boat. Well, endorphins are all about endurance. This is about postponing gratification. The word endurance is basically signifying all things endorphins. So yeah, the ship of Shackleton that was the Endurance is almost the same word as endorphins. Also, I could go on and on. The third prime is epsilon. This is prehension. Epsilon and prehension are also near anagrams to each other. Epsilon prehension. Yeah, so I wanted to get Shackleton out of the way. Eventually, when Robert Falcon Scott does get to 90 by 90, the X marks the spot of the North Pole, he finds Ronald Amundsen from Norway has already staked his flag. He's already poked a wooden stake in his claim, and he was in it for the adventure. He wasn't in it for science or research. He was just in it for the adventure. And so Polyphemus getting the wood stuck in his eye is basically what Robert Falcon Scott endured when he found out that this guy from Norway already won the prize and made his claim. I think that was in 1912. He started in 1911 on the Terra Nova. There's a 911 right there, and then he accomplished the South Pole on January 17th of 1912 and finds out that this guy from Norway already did it. Norway is crazy stoic. They are so crazy stoic. And I think Norway was signified by Loki's staff in the Avengers series. The entire shape of the staff is the whole coastline of Norway where they ship out their big sticks, their lumber industry off to the world and dominate. They totally dominate. It's amazing. So yeah, Ronald Amundsen is hailed in the number 8, controller. He already had control. He had already made his claim on the territory. Next, the Aeolians. This is in the mythology of Antarctica. This is the Weddell Sea. And in the Weddell Sea, there is a great hole called a Polynia, Polynia. Is this great hole. And the great hole is actually formed by waters heating up and rising or cooling down and falling. Heating up and rising and cooling down and falling. That's basically what the hot air balloon of the Zephyr wind was doing. And this is in the Wennell. Though, I think it's Wennell. Wennell. The Wennell. The Zephyr winds, the western wind, is the wind of El. It's a god wind. And it's also this hole is 7,800 kilometers across. Well, the 7 to the 8 is right here. This is the sword of discernment, the Daikiasune, the justice. This is your certer. This is being assertive, all signified by the jump from the 7 to the 8. Next is the Lake Vostok, totally signified by the Laestrygonians. It's this underworld lake that has actually a clearing space, many miles of clearing. It's basically Shambhala. It reads like Shambhala, the hidden terra incognita. Lake Vostok. This is the 6th largest lake. We're in station number 6. It's the ice there is 15 million years old. Number 6, 1 plus 5 is 6. Also 15, I've been buzzing on this a lot lately. It turns out on the globe, the latitudes, the major latitudes, are 15 degree segments. So this 15 is deeply significant, always will be. Um, but they also, in Lake Vostok, they were said to accomplish their drilling, they had to pour kerosene and uh, cooler antifreeze to make this hole to get a sample, and they contaminated the water. This is the um, this is the there's always something foul or gross or repugnant. There's always a certain degree of anxiety projected onto the number six. It's basically shit coding sex at large, making sex into something gross. That's always part of the spell. This is where Ignatius Loyola is using the techne of, if you cannot be loved, it is better to be feared. This is Machiavellian technology, that they're always hailing to things that are scary by resonating to what is six. It's very sick. It's a sick sense of humor that is always happening around these signifiers, around the Lestragonians. Ignatius Loyola's name is almost perfect anagram for Lestragonians. But also, I want to point out that Antarctica has 2,160 meters of ice. Well, that's 6 times 6 times 6. All of the sacred geometry is just Darby dragons. And 2,106 meters equals 13 miles. 13 is the sixth prime number. So this is just a bunch of Darby dragons math that is planted into the subconscious. And now I want to make a statement here. All of the Darby dragons of the sacred math, I don't think it's telling you not to go to Antarctica. I think it's telling investors to invest extra money on any adventures going to Antarctica. It's increasing the risk factor, so it sounds like they need to invest that much more into the journey. I think they're actually shit coding all of Antarctica so that it gets more grants, more funding, more money, because it sounds scary, as the sacred geometry of a sixth sense of humor. I don't think we should take these things personal. I think they're actually targeting their funders, their investment agencies. Organism 46b is a big fat myth. It's a big octopus with superpowers and knocks out electricity and poisons the water to kill its prey. Has some sort of psychic mind control, and Vladimir Putin is now keeping it as a pet. And he's going to inject his soldiers with its DNA. Real sick sense of humor. All right, the deep lake, 55 meters below sea level. We're in the number 5 spot. This is Melpomene. This is Circe. And in the deep lake, there is something called Hyloarchaea. And Hyloarchaea is kind of a feeding cycle of green algae that cycles through salt, protein, and sugar, cortisol, glucose, sugar, right here. Also, the alchemy of Hyloarchaea is basically Circe's jam. That's her whole jam. She's a master alchemist. And so the whole mythology of this feeding cycle of green algae, boom, Circe's main skill set. Next comes the Nanatic pyramids and the Taylor Glacier and the Blood Falls, from which they say that there are nanospheres being born out of this location. This is hitting really hard on the reticulum and the Chewbacca, Jacob Chansley Chewbacca, getting caught up in the net, and the ritual that Odysseus does in Hades, where he cuts 2 rams and bleeds them out, and then holds the spirits at bay. But as he's holding the spirits at bay with his iron sword, he actually is interrogating them, and he's getting the news on recent events in the world. He's actually finding out all the people who died after the wars that he didn't know about. He's getting updated in Hades. And then he gets instructions from Tiresias. From there, he goes on to the Sirens. and this is the Ross Ice Shelf. The Ross Ice Shelf has singing, singing ice cliffs, uh, much like the cliffs of insanity from Princess Bride. But these singing ice cliffs were discovered by accident. This is exactly where he goes through and has his accident when he uh, braves the straits between Scylla and Charybdis. These were found by accident, and they literally the songs change with the environmental shift. Environmental shift. Envy is the shadow of a number four individual. Individual envy right here. Um, Next is we already did Shackleton and the endurance and Nimrod and the endorphins of the Trinachia, and then coming to number two, this is so subtle. This is the most subtle of them all. Is what's called the Bouvier lifeboat. Is a abandoned lifeboat in a 44-gallon uh, uh, barrel was found halfway submerged in a lagoon. The lagoon is part of the entire scenery of Odysseus mourning his lost history in the island of Calypso. And the ship that went to discover the Bouvier lifeboat was called the HMS Protector. Total giver status, total number two status all the way. Um, and then uh, and then we come back to the number one. And I don't actually have a number one location around Antarctica. Um, but I would say that the number coming back to the number one at the end of the close of the demystifying of Antarctica is coming back to me right now, reforming and perfecting my adventure around Antarctica and sharing it with y'all. All right, folks. I'm not going to say it's a trap. I'm not going to say it's a trap. But I am going to say that we should fortify our wherewithal. We should fortify our wherewithal because all of the worldview warfare between flat Earth and round Earth is going to make a mania for retribution. People are going to be vindicated when they find out that maybe it's this shape, maybe it's not. People are going to feel vindicated, and the vitriol between worldviews is totally part of the propaganda agenda. Worldview warfare. Weltanschauung is about to spark up great arousal, and they already did it with Chansley on January 6th, with him embodying Chewbacca. And they're going to do it again when they raise the standards and start invoking vitriol. They want to invoke vitriol. I just hope everybody stays level-headed or round-headed, whatever headed you need to be. I just want everybody to not play into the worldview warfare regarding the shape of the realm. You know, maybe come over to my camp. It's kind of lonely in dodecahedron Earth perspective. Y'all are welcome. It's real cool over here. It's real cool over here. Papa Plato told us it's a dodecahedron, which is really fascinating because, you know, life is a game of chance, but life is a game of fate, and it's a game of destiny. And I have much to say on managing your fate, your chances, and your destiny. The three Moirae are very potent Rochambeau worldview. The three Moirae, are a perfect example of how it's never either or. It's at a minimum always three different things. Clotho is chance or free association. Lachesis, she is fate or active imagination. And Atropos, the one with the scissors, that's destiny. And you can influence all three of them. They are three different worldviews. Uh, um, Robert Sapolsky, he is leaning on atropos. He's a determinist. He thinks that everything is destined and there is no such thing as fate or chance. He doesn't even believe in the other two fates. Myself, I'm dancing with Lachesis all the time. I believe that there is a great amount of creative command orders, that when we name our ideas, we are manipulating the destiny, or excuse me, we're manipulating the fate of the concepts we give birth to when we give them names. The territories map is going to outlive me, but I gave it a name that'll withstand the test of time. The territories map will outlive me, but I gave it a name so it can endure. Chance and free association, and it is what you make of it. That's a Gordian's knot. That's other people think that there's no such thing as interacting with the unmoved mover and the a causal cause. And I beg to differ. There's a great amount of power in understanding the difference between fate, chance, and destiny, the three moirae. And it's an immunity to false dichotomy. That's what I'm laying out. It's an immunity to false dichotomies. They keep calling it the final experiment. I don't think it's very final. But it is progress. It is progress. All right, y'all. Big love and respect. Check out my slickdistant.com down below. T-shirts, hoodies, Zippos, you got it. All right, bless.